everyone, welcome back to QuickBooks Introduction. Today we are focusing on accounts payable and specifically how do we create a vendor in QuickBooks. Okay, so we are logged into QuickBooks, the latest and greatest 2023 online version. If you go to your dashboard, if you look down here under Money Out, you are going to see an icon. It says Vendor. You have the opportunity to access the screen that we need through that button right there. Or you have the ability to go to the side navigation, and if you click Get Paid, which if you go ahead and do that now, it populates a sub-menu. On the top is Accounts Receivable, on the bottom is Accounts Payable, and go ahead and click Vendor button. This populates the vendor landing page, pretty similar to what you'd find in other screens in QuickBooks. We have the infamous gear icon over here that allows us to customize this landing page and display additional information such as the phone, email, attachments. We have the ability also through this include inactive. If we want this landing page to be just active vendors, we will uncheck this box and it will display only active vendors. So another thing that we can do is actually set the number of rows we want on this landing page, and so we're going to go ahead and set it to 300. We're going to include inactive. Okay, so if you notice over here they have the icon, the export to Excel. Essentially it's self-explanatory, allows you to export this specific list on this page to Excel if you so choose. You have the print icon that allows you to print the screen and print the list of vendors available to you. Another thing I want to point out is this batch actions button right over here. It allows you to select multiple vendors and make them inactive at any given point. You also have the ability here to email a vendor if you so choose. Now moving up at the top here, we have this nice path. It allows us to see how many open purchase orders there are, how many invoices are overdue, how many bills that we have open to pay, and how many we've paid in the last 30 days. Up here at the top, we have the ability to click New Vendor, and we also have the ability to prepare 1099s. For this class, we're going to go ahead and just do New Vendors. But if you notice here, if I click that side, we have the ability to import vendors. In QuickBooks, it does allow you the opportunity to do that. But for this particular class, we're not going to import vendors, but rather just create a brand new vendor. So go ahead and do that. If you notice here, we have the vendor entry form. Up at the top, we have some icons here where you can go ahead and navigate through the address, through the notes, through the additional information, and back at the top. So we're going to go ahead and create a vendor. We're going to go ahead and say that this is Frank Smith. And if you notice, what QuickBooks does is under vendor display name, it sets it to the contact of that vendor. We actually want to change this so it displays to the company name. So that way, when you view your list up here on the landing page, you're going to have the vendor's name appear. You can enter in the email, the phone number, cell, fax, website, other. It gives you a lot of good information you can key in. Now, under this name to print on checks, it's self-explanatory, but maybe you want to add an ink to that company, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Whatever you put in here is actually going to display on the checks that you issue this vendor. Enter in the address right now. We can just enter in an address quickly. You can enter in some notes. You can do attachments up to 20 MB if you so choose. You also have the ability to set a EIN or a tax identification number for this vendor. If by chance this vendor is a subcontractor that charges you hourly and you happen to know that rate, by all means feel free to enter that here. You also have the ability to check this box and track payments for 1099 purposes. And here you have the terms. We have due on receipt, net 15, net 30, net 60. For right now, we're going to choose net 30. If you have an account number that you want to establish in the system for you for this vendor, you can so choose and do that. Enter it now. Now here comes all the fun stuff right now when we're talking about the general ledger. This vendor right now, we're going to go ahead and then choose what expense that we think that this vendor is going to be. Let's, for instance, say that this is an insurance company, a vendor that we're paying for liability insurance. So we're going to select liability insurance. Every time we record an invoice, a bill for this specific vendor, it will book it into the general ledger insurance's liability insurance. We don't need an open balance, and this date here is just saying when we created it. You want to go ahead and click Save. Okay, so if we look now, this is the vendor we just created. It gives us a confirmation that this vendor has been created and it's official. Now I want to go briefly back into this page. You do have the ability, once you create a vendor and you have them established, to click into their activity and see every possible transaction you've ever entered into the system specific to this vendor. If you notice here, this is the actual detail for ABC vendor. Up here we have new transactions, where it'll give us a user-friendly ability to either create an expense for this vendor, enter a bill, do a check, a purchase order, everything and anything under the sun for this vendor. Down here you have all the transactions. If you notice here, there are two tabs: transactions list. The second is vendor detail. Goes without saying that vendor details, you have the ability to edit the information for this vendor if you so choose. And under transactions list, you're going to see everything between bills, payments, credits, anything you've processed for this ABC vendor is going to appear here. You have the infamous gear icon to display additional detail on this screen, if you so choose. You have the ability to go ahead and export this transaction information into Excel by clicking this icon here. You have the ability to print it, which is basically what it says. Literally print out the detail on this page. Over here you have a drop-down action list. For every record, you have the ability to view that bill, or again, it could be a payment, it could be a credit. You have the ability to copy it, delete it, and you can even mark this bill as paid, or even in this situation, schedule a payment. Up here you have the edits. If you want to go ahead and make this vendor inactive, you can. You also have the ability to merge contacts. Now we're going to go ahead and show you quickly, before we end this tutorial, how do you go ahead and make a vendor inactive. Simply just click that Make Inactive button, and it says, are you sure you want to do that? And we are going to go ahead and say yes. Notice that this vendor is now officially inactive by the deleted status up here. If we go into our landing page of the vendor list, you're going to see that this vendor is now still officially inactive. And here it gives us two options to make this vendor active again. We can click Make Active right up here, or we can go into the vendor detail. And right up here, there's a button that says Make Active. So let's click that. Boom, just like that, the vendor is now active. It is really that easy. Now, if you have a vendor has as activity and you make it a decision to make that vendor inactive, I want to show you quickly the difference. QuickBooks is smart enough to recognize that we still have bills outstanding for this vendor, and before you make this vendor inactive, it is going to warn you, and it's going to say, making this vendor inactive will cause adjusting transactions to be created. Is that okay? Bear in mind that you have balances sitting in your liability account and that you still need to pay this vendor. What you want to do is be mindful of that anytime that you make a vendor inactive and you have liabilities sitting there, to be mindful of the activity and the transaction adjustments that happen thereafter. Audit your general ledger and make sure that all the transactions posted correctly in accordance to how you had envisioned. So that pretty much sums up everything in regards to entering vendors. Again, QuickBooks is very user-friendly, and I hope that you've learned everything you need to know to manage your vendors effectively. I look forward to seeing you into the next module. And welcome back to the QuickBooks introduction. Today we are focusing on the accounts payable module, and specifically, how do you create a purchase order in QuickBooks? Okay, so here we are logged into the latest and the greatest, the 2023 QuickBooks Online version. Now, to access the purchase order section, I want you to look at the side top over here. You have a button called New. If you click that, you are going to get a pop-up menu. Right underneath there, under Vendors, if you scroll a little bit down, you are going to see Purchase Orders, and you go ahead and click that. So the purchase order screen pops open, pretty user-friendly, basic information you would expect. So let's begin. You begin by selecting your vendor from the drop-down list, and for this example we're going to use Wholesale Supply Company. Now if you noticed right over here an email address popped open, usually that's a good indicator that this process in QuickBooks allows you to send this purchase order via email once you generate it, and that's exactly what we're going to show you today. Right over here you have the ability to begin by making sure if you need to edit the vendor's address, you can so do that right now. You also have the ability to identify the shipping address in which you want this sent to. Right now we're defaulting it to have it sent to King of Prussia. We'll leave it as is, but you do have the ability to edit it if you so choose. Next we're going to go into the purchase order date. Because we are creating it today, we are going to leave that as is. And then there's the ship via. Maybe it's possible you already know that that product is going to be sent via FedEx or UPS, or maybe you're indicating to your vendor that in fact you want it sent via FedEx or UPS, so you can include that there. Permit number over here is really not applicable. Tags I've discussed in other screens, in other modules, that is, that's something that we're not going to touch on here. You could use tags for this specific thing, but we're not really going to do that. Under categories and item details, there's two different ways, as I've often said with QuickBooks. You can expense something through categories, which is basically going down here, selecting your general ledger account, and then entering the amount. It's like what I call a straight line GL entry. The other option, which is the option we're going to use today for this specific example, is actually choosing a product or service associated with this purchase order. And in this live example, we've established a vendor called Wholesale Supply Company. And if you notice right over here with Wholesale Supply Company, we've already pre-established in the vendor's account that we purchase AC units from this vendor. And so right now we're going to go ahead and decide, okay, well, what kind of AC unit are we buying from this vendor? Let's choose AC unit 300. It becomes a question of now saying, well, how many AC units are we going to buy and put on this purchase order? One of the good things, if you notice on the screen right now, if you look right over here, QuickBooks already tells you, by the way, you already have 101 units available in your inventory for this specific AC unit. And they also established the reorder point that you had put into QuickBooks as 30 units. So the quantity on this purchase order, if we add an additional 10 units, it's going to take our total inventory of these units to 111. Now with that being said, when we get to the rate again is a standard rate that we put in the system when we went ahead and actually set the vendor's account. $20,000 does seem a little bit steep for me, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this to 1, so let's make it $2,000. Okay, so the amount is $2,000. We're only going to go ahead and buy one additional AC unit, which brings our total inventory to 102. Now, if you get down here and you say, well, you know what, I really need some additional line items, you have the ability to click that Add Lines item. If you say, well, you know what, I really don't need them, by all means, feel free to click this trash can. It will automatically remove those additional line items. You will notice, though, for whatever reason with QuickBooks, if you decide to delete line item number 2 by clicking this trash can, it won't allow you to do that. You do have the Clear All Line Items buttons, which will clear everything you've keyed in. I don't recommend that. Now over here with the last couple bits of fields that we have, if you want to include a message to your vendor, you can by including it in this box. If you want to include a memo, like in this case we could include an account number, we can do that right here. And you have the ability to do attachments, maximum of 20 MB. Now, as I've often said, if QuickBooks allows you, as you can see here, to email a purchase order to this vendor, whatever you put in this attachments box will be included in that email that you send to the vendor. So I highly recommend that you just make sure you know what it is that you're including, and make sure that that's something you want to send to the vendor. Now with that being said, if you look at the buttons down here, you can cancel, clear, you can print, we don't necessarily want to print this. We want to actually send this via email to the vendor. So how do we do that? Right over here in this green button down here, you have the ability to click this box. Now, if we clicked save and close is just that. Save this transaction and close the screen. If we click this drop down arrow over here, you're going to see save and send. Save and send is exactly what it is. Save and send via email. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And the send email comes up. If you notice here, this is the vendor's email address. We have the ability to edit the subject of this email if we so choose. We have the ability to edit the body of the email if we so choose, and we get a glimpse as to what this purchase order is going to look like. Now, it's possible over here that you want to go ahead and print this purchase order. You can. And if you notice right over here, as I went before, and I'll just cancel out of here real quick. Right over here, if you want to just quickly print this purchase order, you do have the ability to click print and download it to your PC if you so choose. Right here. But let's go ahead and click save and send. It's going to bring us back to the screen again. And let's do send and close. Email was sent to the vendor. Now, just for our purposes, let me see if it actually... There we go. Here is the email. This is an example of what the vendor is going to receive. Let's click that email open and see what it looks like. As you see here, it's the preset template that we sent. Dear Jack, such and such, thank you very much. Purchase order summary. And right down here of this email, the vendor is going to have the ability to actually see the PDF attachment of that purchase order. As I said before, if you had added any other additional attachments in that screen, it literally would appear here and would have been sent to the vendor. That's pretty much it. If you notice, when we sent it to the vendor, it put us back into this dashboard. Right now, I think the last step I want to show you is validating, in fact, that that purchase order is in the system for you. So you would do that by clicking Get Paid on the side navigation over here, finding your vendors, going down to Wholesale Supply Company, going into the Transactions List tab, and you're able to see that purchase order that we actually processed right now. See it right here, account number A100, purchase order 1004. The amount is $2,000. And if you notice here, there's a little action icon button right next to this record. Goes without saying, you can definitely go ahead and reprint this purchase order if you so choose. You can edit this purchase order, you can delete it, you can create a copy, or if you even want to send it again, you have the ability to click that send button and send it again. Now, another way for you to access, you just said to me, that's great, but do me a favor. How do I see all the purchase orders I have for all the vendors that we have? If you go into your vendors page, landing page right here, if you notice right at the top up here, it says you have 3 outstanding purchase orders with a total of $8,000. If at any point you wanted to see your purchase order list, just click that path and it'll populate down here all the vendors that you have purchase orders open to, and you'd be able to navigate through the entire list as you so choose. As you see here, there's 3 applied to Wholesale Supply Company. And that's as simple as it gets. Hopefully this tutorial gives you everything and anything you need to manage and create purchase orders in QuickBooks. And I definitely look forward to seeing you into the next module. And welcome back to the QuickBooks introduction. Today we're focusing on accounts payable, and specifically, how do you enter a bill into QuickBooks? Okay, so here we are logged into the latest and the greatest 2023 QuickBooks Online version. Your dashboard may look slightly different depending on what version you're using. But if you toggle all the way down here, you're going to be able to access the bill entry page through this little icon here under Money Out. You're going to see bills. Another way that you can actually enter the bill screen is through the side navigation here. Just click Get Paid. and you are going to have a sub menu that pops open. You've seen this before if you've used QuickBooks. The top portion is AR, the bottom portion is AP. You want to go ahead and click Bills under the Pay. Okay, so this is the actual landing page of your bills. They show you the ability to say, show me all the records of bills that have been unpaid and all that have been paid. You can toggle back and forth depending on your preference. Similar to other screens in QuickBooks, you're going to have the ability to customize this landing page a couple different ways. You can say filter the number of records here, show me only the bills for the last 12 months, show me the bills during a specific date, or maybe you even just want to see the bills specific to a vendor. You just click that and select who that vendor is. Another option that you have here to customize this landing page is the infamous gear icon that you see in other screens as well. You can select the number of rows here. You can select additional columns here if you so choose. We have the bill number, as you see here. Pop open and we have that selected. The bill date. You want to see that on the screen. Tailor it however you so choose. Now before we move into adding a bill, I want to point out a couple action items. If you see the record here similar to other screens, you have this drop down and you want to select that. It gives you all the bells and whistles that you can do specific to a bill. You can delete this bill, you can create a duplicate, you can view and edit this bill, you can even schedule a payment. Maybe you've selected multiple records, you do have the ability to do that as well. Here you also have a link that basically says mark as paid. Why would you do that? There are times that you're going to issue a manual check to a vendor. This is how you would actually enter in that manual check, just literally clicking that mark as paid. Now let's start with adding a bill. When you click this green button at the top, you're going to see you have various options. Upload it from the computer, create a bill, or create a recurring. Recurring bills are what you'd expect, bills you receive every month. Maybe you're paying a landlord, maybe you're receiving an electric bill, and you don't want to key that bill in every single month. We're not going to cover recurring bills on how to do that here in this class, but I just wanted to point that out just so you know that it exists, and we will definitely cover it in another class. So for right now, the one that we're going to select is create bill. So go ahead and do that. Click that. The bills page automatically comes up. Okay, so this is what you typically expect to see, all the bells and whistles, key in, all the data entry. But for starters, what you want to do is actually select the vendor. So we're going to choose ABC vendor. And if you notice, when you first create a vendor into QuickBooks, QuickBooks basically says, there are certain default items you can establish. One of the most popular, obviously, are the terms for that vendor. If you notice here, the terms pre-populated as 30 terms. That's because we had actually preset that for this specific vendor. Another thing that QuickBooks lets you do, which is user-friendly, it lets you to establish a general ledger account to a specific vendor. In this case, we knew that ABC vendor was our office supply company. So we set the general ledger to office expenses, office supplies, so it pre-populates every time we choose to pay a bill for this vendor. We do have the ability to enter in the address or edit the address if we so choose. We also do, again, you do not have to commit to the net 30. You can toggle here and actually set up other terms, net 60, due on receipt, net 15, whatever you so choose. You also have the ability to enter the bill date. So if you look at that bill, let's just say theoretically that bill is June 8th. We will put that there. It automatically updates the due date for that bill. The next thing you want to do is actually enter in the bill number from the bill. So let's just say that they invoiced it and it's $7,900. Permit number is not really applicable here, so we're going to actually leave that blank. Before we move down here, I just want to point out two things. QuickBooks, again, is infamous for making your life easy. They give you the additional line items here that you can continue on and add additional expenses. Here you want to go ahead and enter in the actual bill amount. We're going to say that they billed us $350. Now, if you're wondering why it was defaulting to 100, that's solely it was picking up the previous bill that we had entered for this vendor, and it'll do that. So what you want to always remember is when you get down to the amount, make sure that it matches the bill that you received for that vendor. If you want to add additional line items, possible you have them, you can go ahead and click that Add Lines button. You see here they populated. We don't really need them, so we're going to click this trash can and delete them. Two other things I want to point out here before we actually seal the deal with this bill is the memo section here. You can key in whatever information. Maybe we have a purchase order number and you want to put that information there. The other thing is the attachments. As you've seen in other screens, you can upload something to this bill for your references. Maybe you ended up getting a copy of a purchase order and you want to make sure it's attached to this record. You can do so. I won't click this now, but you have up to 20 MB. Now, with that being said, one of the things before we click this save and schedule payment for this bill, I want to point out is make recurring. Again, similar to the other screen, you do have the option to say, okay, I want to make this specific bill a recurring bill, and you can click that button there. But we're not going to go ahead and do that. You have the ability, of course, to clear it, cancel it, save it, and then click the save and schedule payment. If you are re-entering another bill after that, you can do save and new or save and close. So for right now, we're actually going to save and close. Okay, so the bill is saved. As you can see here, let's see where the bill is. Here it is, $350, ABC vendor, bill number 7900. Everything looks good. We will focus in other modules, how do you actually record a payment for this bill. So no worries there. Just move on to the next module and you'll get a glimpse on how to actually issue checks. Hopefully this quick tutorial on how to enter bills gave you all the information that you need, and I definitely look forward to seeing you in the next module. And welcome back to QuickBooks Introduction. We are focusing on accounts payable today, and specifically, how do you enter a recurring bill in QuickBooks? Here we are logged into the latest and the greatest 2023 QuickBooks Online version. Now, to access entering a recurring bill, we're actually going to be entering through the Enter Bill section. If you go onto your dashboard and go down here to Money Out, you're going to see that icon that says Bill. You can click that to access that screen. You can also access it through the side navigation by clicking Get Paid. So we can go ahead and do that right now. Up at the top of this, you are going to see the accounts receivable, and at the bottom, the accounts payable. Here is that bills button right there. I want you to go ahead and click that. And this takes us actually to our bill entry page, which if you have covered the module that how to enter a bill, you've seen this screen before. Okay, so what I want to briefly point out are two buttons that we need for this lesson right now. One is the Manage Recurring Bills over here that we're not going to click right now. We're going to first create the recurring bill, but this button here will let you actually see what recurring bills you've created. And the second, if you click this green button at the top, it says right down here on the drop down, Create Recurring Bill. That's exactly what we want to click. Now, as that populates that screen, which it has automatically right now, why would we create a recurring bill? Well, maybe there is a landlord that you pay every single month, or in this case, we're going to use the example, an electric bill you pay every month. You want to save yourself the time of entering that bill over and over and over into QuickBooks. Make your life easy. Create a recurring bill. Have QuickBooks do the work for you every single month. It'll create it every single week, every single year. Whatever it is that you establish on these terms, it'll establish that automatically there waiting for you to actually pay that bill. So let's move forward to this template, which is what it calls it. It establishes you're creating a template for this recurring bill, and we want to make sure that we give it a name. So we're going to call it electric because we are going to use an electric bill as an example. It's asking us, do we want to schedule this now? Do we want to simply use QuickBooks to remind us of that recurring bill, or do we want to unschedule it? In this case, we know that we want it physically recorded and to generate an AP for us so we can print a check. So we're going to select scheduled versus a reminder. So let's go ahead and do that. When do you want it created? If we know that bill is going to be paid on the first of every month, we want to give ourselves some time to actually generate that check and actually have that check signed. So let's just say that we want that bill created in the system 7 days in advance before it's due. Moving down here to vendor, we're going to select the vendor and we're going to choose XYZ Electric. It sets up the defaults for this vendor down here. As you notice, their mailing address and the terms that we have set up for this vendor, which we can change if we want, net 15, net 30, net 60. Now let's establish the interval. We want this set up as a monthly, but as I said before, you can set up a daily, weekly, yearly, monthly recurring bill. This one is going to be monthly. We want it to occur on the first of every month. And let's go ahead and establish our date of when we first want this first one to be created. Now, QuickBooks is obviously not going to let us set it up for June 1st. If it is June 29th, you can't backdate it. You have to either do the present day or the future. So in this case, we're going to choose July 1st. Then it's going to ask us, when do you want this recurring bill to end? We have three options. Maybe we never want it to end, and in which case we will select none. Maybe you have a specific date that you want QuickBooks to stop doing this recurring bill, and you can enter that here. Or maybe it's you only want a certain number of times you want this to do this. Maybe 3 frequencies, 4 frequencies, and you can enter that. But for right now, for this one, we're going to just choose none. Moving down here, permanent numbers not applicable, tags. Tags I've covered in other modules explaining what they do. I'm not going to cover this in this module. It is in the Enter Bills module, so you can revisit that module if you so choose. Here, when we created the vendor, anytime you create a vendor, you have the ability to default to a specific general ledger. And if you notice here, when we created this vendor, we knew it was an electric bill, so we defaulted it to record the expense to the utilities electricity. We can enter in a description if we so choose. And let's talk about the amount of the bill. Maybe we know our electric bill is going to be $1,000, a whopping $1,000 a month, and we'll go ahead and do that. Over here, there is the add line items. QuickBooks is infamous for giving you the ability to enter in additional line items. If you don't want them, just click the little trash can and remove them. You can also click clear all lines right here, which you don't want to do right now though. You have two other options here. You can enter in a memo if that's as you so choose, and the attachments up to 20 MB. As I've said in many other tutorials, be mindful of what you attach here. Whatever you attach here, if you happen to send this bill to someone via email, even the vendor, whatever you attach, it's going to take this attachment and send it along with it. Be mindful of that. So it looks like we have everything we need. Let's go ahead and click and save this template. And it says recurring bill has been saved. So we are good there. Now this is where we're going to get to manage recurring bills. Let's go ahead and click that to see if in fact it was created, which it is. You can see here, electric, scheduled. It's a bill. It's to occur every month starting the July 1st. It's made to XYZ Electric vendor at $1,000. And of course, as QuickBooks is infamous for, that gear icon that gives you the ability to customize this page on the number of rows, the ability to print this, anything that's on this list if you so choose, clicking this action drop down arrow, the ability to do whatever you want to this record. And let's see what we have. We have the ability to use this. We have the ability to create a duplicate. We have the ability to pause it if we so choose. We have the ability to say, hey, let's skip to the next date. I don't want July 1st. Maybe I want August 1st. And we also have the ability to delete it if we so choose. Up here, you have the ability to create new. And so that hopefully gives you everything you need to not only create a recurring bill, but to view the list so that way you can manage your list effectively. I absolutely look forward to seeing you into the next module. And welcome back to the QuickBooks introduction. Today we are focusing on accounts payable module, and specifically, how do you expense something in QuickBooks? Okay, so here we are logged into the latest and the greatest of 2023 QuickBooks Online version. So now there are actually two ways that you can access the expense screen that we need for this class. If you scroll on down, once you log in, you're going to see a section called Money Out. This is the accounts payable section, and there is an icon here that says expense. Now the second way you can actually access this screen is by clicking this new button up here, and a pop-up menu appears. Right here under the vendors column, you are going to see expense. By all means, feel free to click that. Here we are in the expense screen. Now let's just briefly describe why you would use an expense versus a enter the bill. In expense type of situations, it may be possible as a company that you incurred an expense via a credit card, or maybe you had someone come into your office and need some money out of petty cash. You want to go ahead and account for that expense into the system, but you also want to have traceability as to who it is that you paid. You would definitely use the expense screen. In this type of situation, you're not going to be receiving an invoice from the individual who wants maybe some money out of petty cash, but you definitely do want to account for it on your books. This is a perfect opportunity to use this screen to record that transaction. So let's go ahead and proceed. Right now, let's choose who we paid, and let's just say theoretically Bob, the sales rep, came into our office. Not Bob, John, that is. John came into the office and he asked for $30, a whopping $30 out of petty cash. And we gave him the money, but we want to make sure that we actually account for it and account for it in his account. So right now you have the option to choose the account you used. And in this case, it's slightly different. We're not using our basic cash account. We do actually have a petty cash account set up for this. So let's go ahead and select that. Okay. It does show you the balance of that cash account right now, and we have $5,000 in petty cash. That's a pretty decent chunk of change. So right now you go into payment date, actually happened today, so let's just leave that date as is. The next field you have is payment method. Instead of choosing check, because remember we did petty cash, we gave him actual physical cash. He gave us the receipt, so let's go ahead and select cash. Now here's an opportunity under reference number. Again, you're not necessarily getting an invoice, so you can't really reference an invoice. Anything you can use that you find adds some traceability to that transaction is very helpful. In this case, let's just use RCT, standing for receipt, and we can put 070123. Again, just maybe whatever it is for our company, RCT stands for receipt, signifying that there is in fact a receipt available. Now with John, we had pre-defaulted him under the general ledger, if you notice here, categories detail, to the GL of travels and meals. But again, it is maybe possible that John wants a reimbursement for office supplies. If that's the case, you select that. My point is this, is that you can honestly select any general ledger account that fits the situation. In this case, we're going to say it was $30 worth of a meal. Okay, so here you want to just make a brief notation. If you so choose, it is very optional. We said that we actually paid him $30 in petty cash. You can also add a memo here if you want. And right underneath here, you do have the ability to make an attachment. Again, if you have a physical receipt from John, you may want to go ahead and actually scan it and attach it to this transaction, and you can do that here. Up at the top, just before we actually go ahead and save and close this transaction, I want to point out here that expense can be done in two different ways. An expense towards a general ledger account, as is the case here, or there is an expense towards product and services. You simply select that, choose your product or service that you're expensing. So those are two different types of expenses in the system. You definitely just pick whichever one fits the situation. Now moving on down here, before we actually close the deal on this transaction, you have three options. You can save in new, which is new, creating a new expense to enter. You can save and close, which is going to literally close the screen out. Or you can click the button save. I highly recommend clicking save because it gives you the opportunity to view the transaction journal. And let's go ahead and do that. transaction has been saved. This is a one and done deal. The GL and the cash have been impacted right now, and if you notice at the top, the balance changed. It is now $30 less. So let's go ahead and click the More button that appeared. Once we click Save, it appeared at the bottom. If you notice, this More button gives you the ability to avoid the transaction, the ability to delete it, the ability to do a transaction journal, do a copy of it, and audit history. As I've often said, audit history is not the most user-friendly screen. It really just shows you what the system did. Generally, your accountant in the office would use transaction journal, so let's go ahead and click that. Okay, so here we are on the transaction journal report. This gives you a clear indication, all that good stuff that we love to see, the debits and the credits. If you scroll on over here, you're going to see the credit to petty cash, and you're going to see the debit to travels, meals, expense. Right over here, you do see that the transaction took effect. Up at the top, you do have the export button if you so choose to create a PDF version, save it to your desktop, export it to Excel, as well as a CSV file. So that's pretty much it. If you go back in this screen, it's going to throw you into reports. So let's go, actually, before we close this class right now, let's go back to the vendor's account, and let's actually find John. Here we are with John, so I can show you what that transaction looks like in the system. This is John's details accounts. We go to transactions list, and if you notice here is the transaction that we just entered. It shows that we paid. Again, another great opportunity for you to physically track your sales reps as actual vendors, have that good detail, so at any given point you have an audit trail. Again, if you viewed this transaction by this drop down action button over here, you do have the ability to delete it, the ability to void it, the ability to print it, copy, and if you want to edit and view it, just literally go and click View and Edit, and it'll take you back to that screen. It's not signed, sealed, and delivered, and by that I mean is you do have the ability, if by chance for whatever reason John came back into your office and says, no, I don't want $30, I want $40. Again, you don't have to necessarily void it. You can just update the information, click Save, and it will update the information for you in the general ledger. I know that was a very quick tutorial on how to use expenses. Again, very simple, easy process. I hope that it gave you all the information that you need to manage your expenses through this process, and I definitely look forward to seeing you in the next class. And welcome back to the QuickBooks Introduction. Today we are focusing on the Accounts Payable module, and specifically, how do you receive inventory in QuickBooks? Okay, so we are logged into the latest and the greatest of 2023 QuickBooks Online version. Now for today's example, we are going to say that we received a bill from a vendor that we had originally created a purchase order for. So we want to go ahead and apply that bill to that purchase order. So how do we do that? Well, what you want to do is you want to actually find the vendor first. And to do that, once we've logged in, you do have the ability to access your vendors solely through the dashboard by going to Money Out section and clicking this vendor icon. The second option you have is going through the side navigation here. If you click Get Paid, you're going to have a submenu pop open. At the top, you're going to see AR, at the bottom AP, and you can click Vendors there. Now our example is we're going to say we received a bill from Wholesale Supply Company, and we want to apply that bill to that purchase order that we created for them. You have two ways of accessing the purchase order. Right up at here at the top, QuickBooks is nice enough to give you a path access, easy access to all the purchase orders you have open. We could literally click that and find our vendor that way. Or because we know it's Wholesale Company, let's go ahead and just go into their account. If you notice here, you have the type column here. This identifies whether something is a bill, whether it's a check, whether it's a purchase order. And for this live example, we're going to go ahead and say that it is purchase order 1004 that we received the bill for, and we want to apply the bill to that. If you notice over here, there is copy to bill. And that is exactly what we're looking for, that action item. But if you notice here, I just want to point out, same, here's another purchase order. Where is copy to bill? Well, if you click this drop down arrow, you will be able to find copy to bill. So let's go ahead and click copy to bill. and it's going to throw you into the bill. But one of the things I want to point out here is, if you notice, QuickBooks is very smart enough to already know that we are linking this purchase order to this bill. Now remember, purchase orders are just data entry. Purchase orders never affect your GL. But we have a purchase order. We want to make sure it's accounted for when we receive this bill. We want to apply this bill to that PO. So you do have the ability here to edit the mailing address information if you so choose. You have the ability to go ahead and edit the terms, as well as make sure that you account for the bill date. Let's just say that the bill is July 1st. And you want to make sure that you enter the invoice number on that bill. Let's just say that they billed us and the bill number is 57. Permit number is not really applicable here, tags are not. We've already accounted for our category items down over here. We don't need this. Let's get that out of the way. And then right over here, we have item details. We see here that our PO was originally for $2,000, 1 unit. Just validate that your purchase order and this screen actually matches. Yes, in fact, we know that we received the unit. We're okay with that. Now, if by chance, for whatever reason, that vendor actually sent you additional line items, expenses on that specific bill, by all means, you do have the ability to go ahead and click this, select the appropriate. Maybe they actually charged you shipping, and in which case you would go up here in this category detail section that hits your GL and find your shipping expense account and actually record the shipping up here under categories. Now, item details just goes without saying that if you look here, the difference between categories and item details, items details is solely focused on products and services. Categories is where you're going to hit that GL account if you so choose. Okay, so everything looks good. We know we received it. Right down here, we have the ability to enter the additional information in the memo. We have the ability to go ahead and make an attachment. You have up to 20 MB. Maybe you want to actually do an attachment of that purchase order into the system along with this bill. I'm not sure why you would, but if you did want to, you can do that. So with that being said, it is possible at times that you may receive a bill from a vendor that has multiple POs attached to that bill. If you notice right over here, if there is on the off chance that there is an additional purchase order, you have the ability to go ahead and link it simply by clicking this add button. So that'll update this to say that there's 2 POs linked to this bill. We're not going to go ahead and do that, but just to letting you know that feature does exist. Okay, so everything does look good. Now we have the last step, which is how do we send it? How do we save it? Well, if you do save and send payment, it goes without saying that you are actually going to be physically saying that you're going to pay this online, and we don't want to go ahead and do that. If we click this drop down arrow, we have the ability to save and close the screen. We don't want to do that also. You have the ability to save in you, which is go ahead and enter another bill. I don't want to necessarily do that right now. What I want to do is I want to click the save button. Here's the reason why. I want to make sure I stay on this screen so I can show you the additional button that appears after you've entered this transaction. So the bill is now officially set to be paid. If you look down here on the same screen that you're in, this more button now officially appears. You have the ability to go ahead and actually delete this transaction by clicking that more button. View the audit history, which in reality is not the most user-friendly screen. It's just a snapshot of what happened in the system. And then you actually have the ability to see the transaction journal associated with this entry. Go ahead and do that. Okay, so here we are in the transaction journal. It's all that good stuff information you'd want to see, which is those debits and credits. You notice here there was a debit to inventory, a credit to accounts payable. It gives you the opportunity to go ahead and print this report out if you so choose. Typically, as an accountant, you necessarily wouldn't, but I did want to go ahead and show you that nice little feature so you can look at your GL transactions that took place when you did that transaction. Now let's go ahead and go back actually to our vendor's account. So let's go ahead. Find our vendor. So if you notice when I clicked the back button, we were originally in the AP screen. Now we're back into reports. So to go ahead and go back, literally just go back to get paid. Find your vendor's account again. And let's go into wholesale supply company. So here, as you can see here, our bill now is officially entered into the system. Wholesale company is now going to get a whopping $2,000 from us when we pay this bill. And if you notice down here, the purchase order that we applied to them is officially closed in the system. Now, it is possible if you made a mistake, no worries there, you have a couple options. You can actually edit this bill if you so choose by clicking this drop down arrow and click edit. Or if, say, theoretically, for whatever reason, you literally just wanted to go ahead and start over, and the answer is whether or not will it reopen this purchase order? Absolutely, yes, it will. So I'm going to show you that as a live example. Not that that's what would happen in this case, but let's go ahead and do that. Let's literally just delete this bill because I want you to see it happen live action. It says, are you sure you want to delete this bill you just entered? Now, if you notice here, the purchase order that was originally closed is now officially open, ready to be received again. It is smart enough to go ahead and say, look at that. They have two purchase orders now. They updated the screen. And let's click purchase orders again. As you can see, this is what that screen looks like. Two open POs. You have the ability to access the wholesale company's detail in here. And that's pretty much it. That is how you receive inventory. When you receive the bill that you created a purchase order from. I hope that this quick tutorial gave you all the information you needed, and I definitely look forward to seeing you in the next class. And welcome back to the QuickBooks introduction. We are focusing on the accounts payable module today, and specifically, how do you pay a bill in QuickBooks? Okay, so we are logged into the latest and the greatest 2023 QuickBooks Online version. And once you log in, if you scroll down, you are going to see Money Out, which is the accounts payable section. And right under that, you're going to see a button that basically says Pay Bills. I want you to go ahead and click that. Now, this screen, when it populates, is essentially showing you all the bills that you have recorded in the system that still need to be paid. And that's all that this screen represents. You have the infamous gear icon that you can customize right over here, the number of rows. But let's start at the top here. This is actually going to show you the checking account that you have the money coming out of. If by chance you have another checking account that you want to use, by all means, click that drop down box and select it from the list. Or if you need to add one, you can do that. Now, it's also going to show you the balance that you have in that checking account right there. It shows us we have $13,000. And you have the ability next to then to say, okay, what is the physical date that you want represented on that check? So by all means, click that little calendar box and choose the correct date. Now, when it comes to QuickBooks, they give you one of two options here. They either give you the option to print later, which is what we have checked off right here, or if you uncheck that, you have the ability to say, I want to go ahead and physically print these checks in my printer right now or online as of right now. Here is the actual check number I want to start off with. For this purpose of this tutorial, we're going to say we want to print them later, so we're going to say print later. If you notice over here, right down over here, it actually shows 3 open bills. It'll show you the number. It'll also show you if any of these bills are overdue, and it'll also actually flag it right over here and say, oops, there's a bill overdue. As you select the bills that need to be paid, you notice here this quantity tells you how much you're going to pay. And right on down here, it shows you the actual balance that you have left in your bank account as you pay these bills. So right now, let's go ahead and do that. Let's select that we're going to pay actually just the past due bill. Now, what I want to make sure you also understand is if by chance, for whatever reason, you decide you don't want to pay the full amount on that bill, if you notice here, I have the ability to edit that amount that I want to pay that vendor simply by just going ahead and keying in whatever I want to pay them. But we're going to actually physically go ahead and pay that full bill. Now, if I click down here, which is the green button, arrow that is, not save and print, but the arrow, you're going to see 2 options. QuickBooks has 2 versions of paying bills, either online or the good old-fashioned way where you do a physical live check via your printer. If you did online, you're going to be selecting schedule payments online, but you do need to have that set up with QuickBooks in order for you to be able to use these services. For this class, we're going to focus on save and print. So let's go ahead and say that sometime later in the future when we decide, we're going to go ahead and print a check, and that check date is going to have 6/30. we're going to pay $300 and we're going to save it and print it, but we're going to print it later. So click that button. It says you've marked one bill to be paid. And if you notice here, what it does is it populates to the print checks page. This is physically where you can print the checks, but what I want to do is just show you, oops, if you accidentally get out of here, how can you access that screen again so you can physically print your checks? Here's your dashboard. If you click new, if you notice down here, there is under vendors a link that says print checks. That is another way for you to access this print check screen in the event that you got out of there. And if you notice, we're back at the same screen. Okay, so quickly again, this is the cash account, this is the balance, this is what we selected to pay. If by chance you've selected a bill and you say at the last minute, you know what, I don't want to pay it, by all means check it and click this remove from list button. It'll give you the option to do that. It's going to give you the ability again, the infamous starting check number. Please make sure that's absolutely correct. Put your check number in there right now. And then QuickBooks does this, I don't know why, but this is how they do it. They actually default to 3 checks here. It basically says on one page, you're going to have 3 checks. It depends on how your check stock is. The standard check stocks come, as you know, with 1 page per vendor. So when it comes to that, you want to make sure if that's your check stock and the way they work, you select 1 check per page. Over here is this add check. Now we're not going to do this, but I did want to point out the fact that this is how you at the last minute do a manual check. It may be that for whatever reason you have a sales rep and he comes into your office and he says, by the way, I just spent $30 on gas, I'd like to be reimbursed, and you know you're doing a check run. This is where it's a great opportunity for you to just quickly add that check in there. It'll expense it and it'll throw it on this list. Now we're not going to do manual checks right now. I've focused on manual checks in another tutorial. This one is solely just to show you how to print checks. So if you want to learn that, just go ahead to that tutorial and you'll learn how to enter in manual checks. But it's just that feature is there. Again, you do have the ability to print through this print icon to print exactly what it says, what's on this screen, and then the infamous gear icon. The ability to go ahead and customize this landing page that we're staring at right now on the number of rows, on additional features here like the date, the type, the payment amount. Okay, so now with all that being said, right down here you have print and preview. So we're not going to physically print the checks via my printer, but what we will do is I'll show you what it's going to look like. So let's look print, preview, and print. Okay, so if you notice here, this is 1 check. Now if we had by chance selected 3 checks per vendors, it literally would be the first page of your stock having 3 checks to be printed on the first page. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty self-explanatory. You have the print icon over here. You have the green print icon over here. If by chance you say, oops, I need to make a tweak, I need to take a vendor off, the checking number I forgot, it doesn't look right, you have the ability to exit out of here at the last minute and exit out of here. And we're going to go ahead and do that. And when you do that, QuickBooks is going to say, by the way, what happened? Is it that you printed all the checks? And are they okay? In which it checks off there. Is it no, I didn't print these checks now, I still need to print them later, and you'll check off no there. Or maybe somewhere in the middle. Maybe you had a printer jam for whatever reason, and some of them printed out okay, some of them didn't, and you have the ability to go ahead under some checks need reprinting and then tell them what that check number is there. But for this purposes, we're going to go ahead and just say, no, all the checks still need to be printed. Go ahead. Okay, you've made your tweak. Maybe it is my check stock starts at 2100 instead. Here it is to print again. Let's go on the story that we printed it. Now we're going to say yes, all the checks printed out correctly. I'm okay. Let's say done. And if you notice here, that's it. All the checks actually officially printed. And hopefully that gives you a quick synopsis, but just for the purposes of validation for this specific class. Let's go back into vendors. And if you notice here with the ABC vendor, which is the check we just processed, $300 was paid to this vendor. And if you notice here, it says bill payment 6/30, status is applied, and we have that invoice marked as paid in full right down here, paid in full. Hopefully that gives you everything and anything you need to know on how to quickly pay a bill in QuickBooks, and I absolutely look forward to seeing you into the next module. And welcome to the QuickBooks introduction. Today we are going to be focusing on the accounts payable module, and specifically, how do you enter in a manual check in QuickBooks? Okay, so we are logged into the latest and the greatest, the 2023 QuickBooks Online version. If you log in, once you scroll down to your desktop over here, right on this landing page, you are going to see a section called Money Out. And right over here, there is a button called Check. I want you to go ahead and click that. That is going to take you to the manual check entry screen. Now, there are two different types of scenarios in which you would be issuing a manual check. The first is where you are going to be telling QuickBooks, I want to record the expense and the check as a one and done. The other type of scenario is maybe by chance, for whatever reason, you issued one of your vendors a manual check and that bill has already been expensed and recorded into QuickBooks. That is a second scenario and a different process. We will show you that different process right after we work on this scenario. This scenario again is recording the expense and the payment as a one and done, and you would use this screen to do that. Now, looking over at this screen, it's pretty user friendly, as you can see. The first thing you want to do is actually select who is going to be the vendor that you're going to pay. And for this live example, we're going to say that we're paying GH Insurance. The second field that you get to is the bank account. It's going to default to your standard checking account. You do have the option to click this drop down menu and select a different checking account or add a new one if you so choose. It's also going to give you the balance right over here of what's sitting in that checking account for you to issue that payment. Now, if you notice right over here, it's defaulting to $300. You might want to say, well, why is that? What QuickBooks does, and I don't know why it does this, but it does this, it picks up the last amount of the transaction that you've ever done for this specific vendor. And so when this screen populates, it says it throws 300 in there. What you want to make sure is that when you get down to the payment amount, which we will in a little bit, you update that payment amount to truly reflect the amount that you paid them. Moving forward here, we have the mailing address. Here you have the option to go ahead and edit it if you so choose. And then you get to the payment date. Whatever you do is refer back to your paperwork for that manual check to make sure that the dates and the check number are in alignment. So that way when you do your month-end bank reconciliation, the numbers match. So right now for the payment date, let's just say theoretically we actually issued, let's see, a manual check on June 4th. And the check number that we issued them, let's just say for whatever reason, it is check number 4000. Now, if you notice over here, QuickBooks does allow you to print this check, this manual check later. But we don't want to do that because it defeats the purpose of entering this manual check into QuickBooks. Let's do it as a one and done deal. So we're going to enter here the check number and leave that print later unchecked. Moving down, as you notice here under the category details section, QuickBooks automatically defaults it to the insurance, the general ledger account that we have for this specific vendor. And so right now we're going to make sure that we update the actual check amount. We're going to say that we paid them $500. Now, you do have the ability to add additional lines by clicking the Add Lines button, and you do have the ability to delete those additional lines if you find that you don't need them by clicking the trash can as I am now. And for whatever reason, if you were to click this, line number 2 would not be deleted. It's just something that the way it is with QuickBooks. Now, I do want to point out right here, items detail. There are two different ways to expense things. One thing is through the general ledger straight line, GL, and the second is where you're actually, as a company, maybe you'd want to expense something through a product or service that you've pre-established into the system. You can do that if you so choose. But for this live example, we're simply going to record the expense straight line to the general ledger, insurance expense at $500. And if you notice up here, $500 is the amount. Now moving down here, we have two additional boxes. We have the memo box. If you want to enter in a memo, you can do that, a notation, whatever the case may be. And you have the ability to do an attachment up to a maximum of 20 MB. And that pretty much sums up this screen. Everything is looks pretty good. Now we are ready to go ahead and actually close this. And check number 4000 has actually been processed. Both the expense again and the check against a credit to cash in QuickBooks. And let's go ahead and find the vendor's account by going to the side navigation, Get Paid. We see our vendors here. Let's go to GH Insurance. And if you notice here, June 4th check number 4000 against the insurance account is $500 paid, has been recorded. That really is as easy as it gets. Now I'm going to show you the second scenario by choosing another vendor. So let's choose ABC vendor. Right now we have an open bill sitting here for $100. We're going to go ahead and say that we issued, for whatever reason, a manual check to this vendor to pay this bill, and we already expensed it, so we don't want to double expense it by using the first scenario we just went through. In this type of situation, it's been expensed, so the only thing you really need to do is find the bill that you did a manual check for, go to the right side over here and click that action drop down button. And you see here there is a link called Mark as Paid. So you want to go ahead and click that. Okay. So you have this screen here. This is basically us telling QuickBooks, I paid a manual check of $100 to ABC vendor. This is the checking account that we're applying it to. By all means, if you need to change that, you can. Again, it's going to show us the balance. It's going to allow us to edit the mailing address. Here's where you want to make sure you update the fields in accordance to when you issued that manual check. Let's say that we paid them June 20th. And instead of check number 4000, it might have been that maybe the check was 4200. Let's do 4201. Okay, so that's pretty much as simple as it gets. We have this checked off already here to pay this bill. You have the ability at the last minute to enter in a memo or an attachment if you so choose, up to 20 MB. And let's click Save and Close. The payment has been officially been made. We are redirected back to this ABC vendor's account. And if you notice right here, here is the line item of our manual check. It is a check being done for $100. If you go down here, now the invoice for the vendor actually shows that that bill has been paid. And that is it. That is everything you need to know in regards to how to enter in manual checks. I hope that this tutorial gave you everything you need to get up and running, and I definitely look forward to seeing you into the next module.